this is much misunderstood, but obviously, in headline terms, the settlement that the NHS got out of the comprehensive spending review was good because it was pretty much flat in numerical terms. But because medical inflation always outstrips RPI, and because of things like the growing cost of technology, drugs for an elderly population, you have an implied gap. So to carry on doing the things that we're doing at the moment is that diagonal line where it becomes, where the blue goes into the orange. What you're actually going to get is where it flattens off the blue line there. And that is the source of the famous 50 to 20 billion pound gap over the next 3 to 4 years. So what the NHS as a system has to work up to doing, if it were a PLC company, you have to reduce your cost base by 50 to 20% over the next 3 years or so. So that's the challenge. And of course, PCTs as commissioners, and the reason why world-class commissioning was set up, were designed to be the key agents in doing that. If you control demand, then you can control the bills, and therefore some of this stuff will start to happen. And this is where it kind of comes full circle, because this doesn't work, and it's certainly true in our recent consulting experience. This doesn't work just by salami slicing individual organisations. So the challenge is the same for the acute trusts. So again, acute trusts have had it, in the main, benefited from the growth that we've talked about over the last few years. But we as an advisory firm are seeing a considerable increase in the number of tenders from hospitals saying, I've achieved all I can in terms of taking cost out, but next year I've got to do another 7%. How am I going to do it? And you're really into, in terms of the skills that we offer, whereas in the past it would be a more traditional approach to do with financial control and cash management, all those sorts of discipline type things. Now it's very much about talking to the clinicians and saying, under tariff, do you understand the financial consequences to the hospital of what you're doing? So there was a great case that we always talk about where two hospitals on the south coast, relatively close to each other, one has a £160 million annual budget, the other's about 250, so one's bigger, one's a bit smaller. And again, not a clinician, so I may have misremembered some of the procedures, but there was a cardiologist whom we had a series of conversations with. And for some of the more acute, more intensive cardiology procedures, he would do the preparation in his hospital. They'd then get sent 10 miles up the road to actually have the procedure, where they'd be in for maybe 5 days. They'd have a bit of intensive care, they then come back to recuperate in the smaller hospital. And the way that worked under tariff, it was for the pre and the post. The smaller hospital got paid about 1,200 quid for the procedure, the other hospital got paid 14 grand under tariff. So you say, well, either you just have to stop doing this stuff or make sure that everybody has the whole procedure in the other place because it doesn't work. And consultants and clinicians are obviously very intelligent people, but they don't necessarily have an awareness that that's how the system works. And therefore, the pre and the post-op stuff he was doing was costing his hospital, in resource terms, an enormous amount of money. So it's all about how do you make, as it's sort of glib to say this, but it's about how do you make the system work better, and what levers do the PCTs have, and as clinicians, what levers do you think you have? And what I'm going to end with is a series of questions which you can take away. So starting off with, do you know, because your PCT is still in charge next year, do you know the amount of their cost reduction target for next year? How many £1 million? Okay, good start, because we have asked that question in similar forum, people haven't known the answer. And of that amount, do you know how that's being divvied up on other providers? So who's going to be under most pressure? Okay, so you all know that? Good. Okay, not everyone does. And as a result of that, what services do you think are going to be most at risk?
Different hospitals respond differently, isn't it? And this is where the press element comes in. We've already been in the press. Well, the acute trust has been in the press.
Yeah. Okay. What levers do you think you have? But I suppose phrase that a different way. Yourselves, compared to the PCT, which hasn't been able to do it, where do you think your critical advantage is going to be? How can you have these conversations and start these things in a way that the PCT hasn't?
From the real ground, we're just looking at clinical behaviour and actually ennobling the primary care provider, because it was last night, we're constantly done down. We don't know how to do anything. We're useless. We can't we can't diagnose things, we always need a specialist, we can't prescribe insulin, which is
Right,
all
yeah.
bullshit. But sorry.
That's all right.
But our specialist colleagues have been really good at making sure that we don't feel
Valued and empowered.
valued
Yeah,
and
okay.
capable of doing things.
Yeah.
And actually, that's what we're working